tragic situation, and I just thought it was, it had to be told, and nobody else was telling it. And
see you soon, idiots.
The script had been around for a while, and it was a good story.
It's for you.
The toughest cowboy in movie history, the man who could silence a room with just one look, sitting alone in his big empty house at 95 years old. No cameras rolling, no crowd cheering, just silence. This is the heartbreaking reality of Clint Eastwood today, and when you hear his story, it might just bring tears to your eyes. For over 70 years, Clint Eastwood has been our hero on the big screen. He was the guy who always won the fight, always got the bad guy, always walked away into the sunset. But behind all that toughness, behind those steely eyes and that famous squint, was a man who struggled with something we all struggle with: loneliness, love, and loss. And now, as he faces his final chapter, the real story is more emotional than any movie he ever made. You see, Clint Eastwood wasn't born a legend. He was born during the Great Depression in 1930, when times were really hard for everyone in America. His family was so poor they had to move from town to town looking for work. By the time little Clint was 10 years old, he had already lived in more than 12 different cities. Can you imagine being a kid and never having a real home, never knowing if you'd be in the same school next month? His father worked in steel factories, but the jobs never lasted long. His mother was very strict, trying to keep the family together while they lived in cheap motels and tiny apartments. Young Clint learned early that nothing in life was permanent. People left, homes disappeared, and if you wanted to survive, you had to be tough. This childhood shaped him into the strong, silent type we all know from movies, but it also made him afraid to get too close to people. At school, Clint was seen as a troublemaker. He got held back a grade and eventually got kicked out of high school for carving inappropriate pictures on school property. But there was one thing that gave him peace: Musta. I see, when he was 12, he taught himself to play the piano. He would sit at that piano for hours, even when his fingers hurt and bled, because it was the only way he could express his feelings. Music became his escape from a world that felt cold and uncertain. Then, when Clint was just 21, something happened that changed his entire outlook on life. He was serving in the Army as a swimming instructor when the military plane he was riding in crashed into the ocean near California. Can you imagine being thrown into the freezing cold Pacific Ocean with no life jacket, no help coming, just you and the waves? Clint had to swim for miles in those icy waters, fighting against currents that wanted to pull him under. Every stroke was a battle between life and death. When he finally made it to shore, exhausted and shivering, something inside him changed forever. He realized how quickly life could end, how precious every moment really was. From that day on, Clint never wanted to waste another minute. This near-death experience gave him the drive and determination that would make him famous, but it also made him appreciate how fragile life could be. Getting into Hollywood wasn't easy for Clint. In the 1950s, he was just another tall, quiet guy trying to make it in a business that didn't really want him. Casting directors called him too stiff, too quiet, not charming enough. He got tiny roles where his name didn't even appear in the credits. But Clint didn't give up. He watched, he learned, and he waited for his chance. That chance came with a TV show called Rawhide, where he played a cowboy named Rowdy Yates. People started noticing this quiet actor who didn't need to say much to get your attention. Then came the role that made him a superstar, the man with no name in those famous Western movies directed by Sergio Leone. You know, the ones where Clint wore that poncho, smoked the O's little cigars, and could kill a man with just a look. But even as his career took off, even as millions of fans around the world loved him, Clint felt like an outsider. He once said, "I've always felt like an outsider, even when I was in the middle of everything." This feeling of not quite belonging followed him his whole life, and it showed up in the lonely characters he played in movies. When Clint started directing movies, it was his way of taking control of his life and his art. He made films about broken men, men who had made mistakes, men who carried guilt and regret. Movies like Unforgiven and Million Dollar Baby weren't just entertainment, they were Clint's way of talking about his own pain and struggles. Every character he created was a piece of himself, and every story he told was him trying to make sense of his own life. But perhaps the saddest part of Clint Eastwood's story is how he struggled with love and relationships. In 1953, he married a wonderful woman named Maggie Johnson. She believed in him when nobody else did, stood by him through the hard times, and gave him 2 children, Kyle and Allison. Maggie was his rock, his support system, the one person who saw the real Clint behind the tough guy image. But success changed everything. As Clint became more famous, he started having affairs with other women. Not just one affair, but many. Maggie tried to forgive him, tried to keep their family together, but the betrayals kept coming. Over the years, Clint had children with several different women, at least 8 children total with 6 different mothers. Some of these children didn't even know Clint was their father until they were adults. In 1984, after 31 years of marriage, Maggie finally had enough. Their divorce was quiet and dignified, but it cost Clint between $25 and $30 million. More importantly, it cost him the love of the one woman who had truly believed in him. The man who could play any tough guy role couldn't figure out how to be a faithful husband. Then there was Sandra Locke, an actress who became both Clint's leading lady on screen and his partner in real life. For 14 years, from 1972 to 1989, they were together, making movies and what looked like a beautiful love story. But behind the cameras, their relationship was troubled. Sandra wanted children and stability, but Clint wasn't ready for that kind of commitment. She had 2 abortions, reportedly because Clint didn't want more children at that time in his life. The relationship ended badly when Sandra discovered that Clint had secretly moved another woman into their shared home. Feeling betrayed and heartbroken, Sandra took Clint to court, claiming he had hurt her career and her life. Although they settled the case privately, the damage was done. Sandra spent the rest of her life waiting for an apology that never came. When she died of cancer in 2018, Clint didn't make any public statement, didn't send flowers, didn't say goodbye. The silence was deafening. But the most heartbreaking chapter of Clint's love life came in his later years. In the early 2000s, when he was in his 70s, he met Christina Sandera at his restaurant in Carmel, California. Christina wasn't an actress or a celebrity. She was just a hostess who worked at his hotel. But she brought something into Clint's life that he had never really had before: peace. For nearly 10 years, Christina was the calm in Clint's storm. She didn't care about his fame or his money. She just cared about the man behind the legend. They shared quiet dinners, long walks on the beach, and evenings filled with music instead of drama. With Christina, Clint finally stopped running from his past and started living in the present. But on July 18th, 2024, Christina died suddenly from heart problems. She was only 61 years old. Once again, Clint was left alone, but this time it was different. He had finally found true love, real companionship, and now it was gone. At 94, he was too old to start over, too tired to keep looking for happiness. The only statement Clint made about Christina's death was simple and heartbreaking. Christina was a lovely, caring woman, and I will miss her very much. Friends say he has never been the same since. The man who survived plane crashes, bad relationships, and decades in Hollywood was finally broken by the loss of the one person who truly understood him. Today, at 95, Clint Eastwood lives mostly alone at his beautiful ranch in Carmel, California. The property is stunning, rolling hills, peaceful gardens, and views of the ocean. But the house feels empty now. Christina's reading glasses still sit on the windowsill where she left them. Her favorite chair remains untouched. The piano she used to play is silent. Neighbors say they rarely see him anymore. When they do, he looks frail and tired. The man who once stood tall as a giant of Hollywood now walks slowly, often stopping to catch his breath. His hair is white and thin, his face deeply lined with age. But his eyes, those famous eyes that could stop a gunfight in a movie, now mostly just look sad. Clint's relationship with his 8 children is complicated. Some are close to him, others are distant. His son Scott has become a successful actor, looking so much like his father that people call him Eastwood Reborn. But even Scott admits their relationship wasn't easy. "He didn't make it easy," Scott once said. "He made you earn it." The truth is, Clint was never very good at being a father. He was often absent, working on movies or dealing with his own problems. He missed birthdays, forgot to call, and kept emotional distance from the people who needed him most. His children love him, but they also carry the wounds of having a father who is famous to the world but often a stranger to them. Despite all his personal struggles, Clint continues to work. In 2024, he released a movie called Juror Number 2, which many people thought would be his final film. But Clint says he's not ready to retire. He's already working on another project because for him, making movies isn't just a job. It's how he stays alive, how he makes sense of his life and his mistakes. Physically, Clint tries to stay healthy. He still exercises gently, plays golf when he can, and follows the same diet he's followed for decades, mostly fish, vegetables, and very little sugar or red meat. He meditates twice a day, a practice he started in his 50s to find inner peace. But even with all these healthy habits, time is catching up with him. The saddest part about Clint's story isn't just that he's alone now, it's that so much of his loneliness was his own choice. He pushed away the people who loved him most. He chose work over family, fame over relationships, and success over genuine connection. Now, in his final years, he's surrounded by all the rewards of his career, the awards, the money, the beautiful properties, but he has no one to share them with. Clint owns several magnificent properties across California and beyond. There's the Mission Ranch where he lives, a golf course called Tahama, and homes in Sun Valley and Maui. These places are beautiful and valuable, but they're also empty. They represent his success, but they also show how isolated he has become. When reporters ask him about his legacy, about how he wants to be remembered, Clint doesn't talk much about his movies or his awards. Instead, he seems focused on the mistakes he made, the people he hurt, and the chances he missed. "The hardest thing isn't losing someone," he once said. "It's knowing you helped push them away." This might be the most honest thing Clint Eastwood has ever said about himself. He recognizes that many of his problems were his own fault, that his fear of commitment and his need for control cost him the relationships that mattered most. But understanding your mistakes and being able to fix them are two different things, and for Clint, it's too late to fix most of what went wrong. Yet despite all the heartbreak, all the regrets, and all the loneliness, there's something almost heroic about Clint Eastwood's story. He never pretended to be perfect. He never claimed to be a saint. He was always honest about being flawed, about making mistakes, about being human. And maybe that's why we love him so much, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. Clint showed us that you could be strong and still be broken, that you could be tough and still be vulnerable, that you could be successful and still be lonely. His movies gave voice to all the forgotten people, all the imperfect men trying to do better, all the souls carrying guilt and looking for redemption. In his westerns, Clint usually played the lone gunfighter who rode into town, fixed the problems, and then rode away alone into the sunset. It turns out that wasn't just acting, that was his life. He spent 95 years riding alone, helping others through his art, but never quite learning how to let people get close enough to help him. As we watch Clint Eastwood in what are likely his final years, it's hard not to feel emotional. This man gave us so many unforgettable moments, so many powerful films, so many characters we'll never forget. He showed us what strength looked like, what courage meant, and how to face life's hardships with dignity. But he also showed us, perhaps without meaning to, how success without love is empty, how fame without family is hollow, and how all the achievements in the world can't fill the hole left by loneliness. His story is both inspiring and heartbreaking, a reminder that even our greatest heroes are just human beings trying to figure out life like the rest of us. Today, when Clint sits on his porch overlooking the California hills, what does he think about? Does he remember the roar of movie cameras, the applause at award ceremonies, the faces of fans who loved him? Or does he think about Maggie's quiet goodbye, Sandra's tears, Christina's empty chair, and all the children who called him father but barely knew him? Maybe he thinks about all of it. Maybe that's what growing old really means, carrying all your victories and defeats, all your joys and sorrows, all your triumphs and regrets, and somehow finding a way to live with all of it. If there's a lesson in Clint Eastwood's story, it might be this. Success isn't just about achieving your dreams. It's about not losing yourself or the people you love along the way. It's about remembering that at the end of the day, when all the lights go out and the crowds go home, what matters most is not being alone. Clint Eastwood will always be remembered as one of Hollywood's greatest legends. His movies will live forever, his characters will inspire future generations, and his contribution to cinema will never be forgotten. But perhaps the most important thing he can teach us is what he learned too late. That being loved is more valuable than being famous, that relationships matter more than achievements, and that it's better to be perfectly happy with a few people than perfectly lonely with your success. So the next time you watch a Clint Eastwood movie, remember that behind that tough exterior was a man who struggled with the same things we all struggle with: love, loss, regret, and the search for meaning. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. He wasn't invincible, but he was strong. He wasn't always right, but he was always human. And maybe in the end, that's the greatest gift any actor can give us, showing us that it's okay to be imperfect, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to be vulnerable, because that's what makes us human, and that's what connects us all. If this story touched your heart, if Clint Eastwood's movies have meant something to you over the years, or if you simply believe that every legend deserves to be remembered as a human being and not just an icon, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves classic movies or who might need to hear that it's never too late to appreciate the people in your life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about the real people behind Hollywood's biggest legends. Because everyone has a story, and every story matters, even when it doesn't have a perfect ending.